up, guys? This is Unit 1, Lesson 5. Today's lesson is going to be focusing on the final battles of the Civil War, the end of the Civil War. So that's the main objective that we're looking at today is kind of the Civil War ends and what events led to the end of the Civil War. So we've already focused on battles. This is the final days of it, or the final few months, and we'll wrap it up with the next lesson on Reconstruction, what to do after the Civil War. So starting off with your preview activity, you have a very racist political cartoon that you're going to be looking at here, and you need to answer 3 questions about this cartoon. But first, you're going to be drawing it. So you're drawing these 3 characters, and you are going to then answer the following questions. 1, what do each of these 3 people represent? 2, who's being sent to war? And then finally, 3, from which perspective is the cartoon artist, Confederate or Union, and explain why. And so, in particular, I want you to think about what is the person who drew this cartoon trying to say about people, a certain group of people. In particular, this center guy right here is kind of the primary focus here. What is the artist trying to say about people like this? So that's what you need to be thinking about is what's the cartoon message? What's the artist message overall? If you have any questions about that, come ask me in class. Let's move on to our lecture for now. First of all, General Grant begins the march towards Richmond. Richmond, Virginia is the capital of the Confederacy, of course. And he's going to be put in charge of the entire Union military effort. He's going to engage Robert E. Lee's forces in several battles throughout the state of Virginia, and the Union is going to change its strategy to something called total war during this time period. So the war's been going on for 4 years. It's getting to the point where it's very frustrating because it's expensive. There's division about it in the North, and there's still resistance in the South, and there's still a willingness to fight in the South despite how poor the economy is and despite their shortages of resources and soldiers and things like that. So with total war, it's going to consist of striking civilian targets and military targets to weaken the army and to weaken the economy of the Confederate States of America. So this is a form of warfare that would not typically be considered very ethical. However, it's going to be used as a way, as you think about the Anaconda Plan we already talked about yesterday, this is the final squeezing of the South into submission. And so we think about wars that we fight today, we don't fight total war anymore. For example, really the wars that we've most recently fought in our history, both Afghanistan and Iraq, the reason we've been there for so long is because we're actually rebuilding those countries' infrastructures, their schools, their governments, things like that. So total war is not necessarily a tactic that's used anymore today, but this was basically hit a point where destroy farms, destroy cities, destroy homes, destroy anything that helps the Southern economy. Any form of private property, civilian property, and military property needs to be destroyed to end this war at a quicker rate. All right, Sherman's march through Georgia. By the way, Sherman is also going to use total war, and I don't know if this is true or not, but this is according to a friend who has a friend named with the last name of Sherman. And because of Sherman's march through Georgia, there is still resentment towards people with the last name of Sherman in Georgia today, that it's harder to get a hotel room booked or an Airbnb in Georgia, supposedly, if you have the last name of Sherman. But that could be total nonsense. I don't know. But that's something I heard. So that would be interesting to find out. So if any of you Shermans out there want to try and book a room in Georgia, let me know what that's like. Anyways, General Sherman right here, the guy with his hand in his pocket there looking all serious, he's going to implement total war on this 250-mile stretch from the Tennessee-Georgia border all the way across the state of Georgia, and then eventually they're going to arrive in Savannah, Georgia on the coast. So this is going to begin in May of 1864. It's going to consist of 60,000 troops, and along the way, total war. So railroad tracks are going to be destroyed. They're actually going to rip them out of the ground and bend them around trees. They're going to heat them up using fire to soften the metal and bend them around trees. Why? So that they can't use them anymore, so that the tracks can't be put back down. Remember, total war is about hurting the economy as much as possible by destroying as much as possible. They're also going to burn down farms. So any food production or anything like that that could help the Confederate war effort, it's going to be destroyed. They're going to destroy buildings. They're going to destroy homes. They notoriously burnt down the entire city of Atlanta. And by December of 1864, William Sherman and his armies capture the city of Savannah, Georgia, um, which is actually a very beautiful little town if you ever get the chance to go visit. Just not too far from Charleston, South Carolina. It's really just on the border between Georgia and South Carolina there, and it's a very cute little historical town. Anyways, like I said, if your last name's Sherman, you might have a hard time getting a hotel there. I don't know if that's true or not, so I'd be curious to find out. But that's what I've heard. And you can see, based on what they did with their march across Georgia, you can also almost understand a little bit why from their perspective. As far as the economic effects of the war, um, this is all the results of the Anaconda Plan. Important to understand. So we wanted to make the Southern economy suffer as much as possible, hoping to bring about a quicker end to this war. And the Southern economy did suffer greatly. They suffered from extreme levels of inflation of currency. So inflation of a currency, in class, I would normally ask you for somebody to tell me what it is. No one here can answer on the video. Inflation is when the value of your money goes down. So the prices of things go up. Inflation is one of those things that occurs naturally. It's actually a good thing if it's in small doses. The government actually wants there to be some inflation because when there's inflation, that means there's more money in the economy. That means the economy is growing. There's a correlation between inflation and economic growth. And as long as it's not too much, that's actually a very good thing for the economy. However, in the South, they're going to have what could be comparable really to almost hyperinflation, where the money was completely worthless. Another example of that famous throughout history is Weimar Germany. Right after World War I, they also suffered from extreme levels of inflation. They're also going to suffer from food shortages. They're going to suffer from a shortage of weapons. We already learned before that they don't have a lot of factories. They don't produce a lot of food. So that's going to be a problem. And then their cotton trades shut down, which is one of the reasons why their currency was so worthless is they had nothing to grow their economy with other than cotton. And they couldn't sell it to anybody because of the Anaconda Plan, because of the blockade of the coast. Meanwhile, the North did have some inflation as well. Wars are expensive, so you got to print money. But because the Northern economy wasn't being restricted by trade, and because of manufacturing, and because of the availability of jobs and things like that, the Northern economy did not suffer nearly as much. They actually had dramatically increased food production, which you're going to find throughout history. There's kind of a correlation with that as well. During times of war, farmers will produce a lot of food, and during this time period, actually, it's going to come to hurt the farmers later on because they're producing this higher demand of food. They're meeting the nation's needs. But once the war ends, that demand for food goes down, and farmers find themselves with crop surpluses and far less valuable crops. So that's kind of looking ahead to the populist movement. This is kind of looking ahead a little bit. Farmers are going to have some issues as well. Manufacturers are going to make huge profits from something called profiteering. And what that is when you manufacture a product and you take advantage of conditions that are going on in the economy and you sell that product for more money than what you typically would sell it for. It's an economics concept. It's based on the idea of supply and demand. When things are rare, when things are hard to get, they become more expensive, or you can sell them for more money. And modern day examples would be when the PlayStation 4 came out, or even when I was younger. Let's go back a little bit further, old school. When the Xbox 360 came out, I remember this very well. People waited overnight to get the Xbox 360, which was about $300 in the store. They would buy it for $300, and they would put it on eBay and sell it for $1,000, $2,000 on eBay to usually upper middle class, upper class women who are buying their kids Christmas gifts. And so you could go to Target, Walmart, wherever, you could not find an Xbox on the shelves anywhere because there were so many people who wanted one. And because of that shortage and that high demand, people who bought those Xboxes were able to profiteer off of it by selling it on eBay to people who are willing to pay more for it because they want to make their kids happy for Christmas. So that would be profiteering. Also, we live in Florida. Another example of that would be if during a hurricane, Lowe's jacked up the prices of generators. Everybody always wants to buy a generator when Florida gets hit by a hurricane. It happened back in 2004 when we got hit by like 10 hurricanes in one month period. That's probably a little bit dramatic. It was more like 5 or 6, but it was a lot of hurricanes, and all the generators in the stores sold out. It would be profiteering for you to buy a generator and to sell it for more money because people are desperate for it. So that's an issue with people because they feel like that it's unethical for companies to be making profits off of war. And you can see why. Their sons are dying in these wars, and here's just these companies making a ton of money off the deaths of their children. And so it's a huge ethical issue, this idea of war profiteering. Anyways, General Lee surrenders to General Grant on April the 2nd of 1865, and boom, the war is over. And now we got to figure out what to do as far as rebuilding the South. And so that's going to be the big focus with our next unit. And there's a lot of things you need to start thinking about. What are we going to do about readmitting states? What are we going to do about current/former slaves? What are we going to, do we make them citizens? What rights do they enjoy? Should they be given reparations or land? Should land be confiscated from plantation owners and redistributed out to freed slaves? So these are the topics we're going to have to discuss coming up with the post-war America. Wrapping this all up, we have a political cartoon of a interesting looking character in an environment in which he is putting something into a stocking while somebody sleeps in the background. So it says Santa Claus Sherman putting Savannah into Uncle Sam's stocking. And if you want some help with answering these questions, you can go back to the slide in which we talked about Sherman's march through Georgia right here. And this might give you some idea for some hints, but really you can figure out most of this on your own. First of all, you're going to identify the three symbols. This creepy looking dude here, who is he? Specifically, what's his name? Who's sleeping? And then what is he holding? Those are the three symbols that I really want you to understand. What month was this cartoon drawn? And what event occurred at the same exact time? And then finally, what is the perspective of the cartoon artist? Is this artist pro-Union or pro-Confederate? What is the artist trying to say in this cartoon about the side? So that's what you need to be thinking about. The person who drew this, what message were they trying to relay? So take your time, answer these questions. If you have any questions, come talk to me in class. As always, thank you for tuning in today.